All right. Hello. Welcome, welcome. So this is our Ask a Q&A testing expert panel, and I'm very excited about this. I think we've all been looking forward to this for a while. I want to welcome everybody. I want to welcome our friends. We got a lot of people and a lot of familiar faces in this call, a lot of new people and experts. Welcome and thank you everybody for coming. And we're growing a lot. These calls are starting to get bigger, so please help us out. Raise your hand. And we're going to try not to deep dive too much and just try to stay light. We can point you in the right direction and, ask us questions. I want to start really with Sonder because Sonder kind of started this whole Q&A panel format on Angular Nation, because when we first started Angular Nation, I asked Sonder to do a talk for us. And he said, I don't have time to do a talk. Just let them ask me questions. And I was like, all right, we'll take you up on that. So we have started asking Sonder questions, and this has turned into a favorite pastime for many of us. We love asking Sonder questions. So I want to start with Sonder. Sonder, do you want to say hello? And thank you so much. Welcome. Hi.
Hi. Hello. I'm Sander. I'm from the Netherlands. I seem to be a GDE, and I seem to know stuff. That's it.
You do.
Hi, Pete.
Hi, Pete.
Sorry I'm late.
No,
my laptop just completely died as I came to log in.
Great. I'm glad you're here. And okay, and I want to introduce, well, let me back up a little bit, because with Sonder, one of the things that I really, really love about this format is somebody told me years ago, if you want to help somebody, don't tell them what they need, ask them what they need. And so basically this format, for those of you who are new, is like the experts are just going to sit there and you're just going to ask them questions and they'll answer questions. And we've done this a couple times and it's super fun and I love it. And when I started Angular Nation, I asked people how can we help you, right? And one of the big things that I heard was unit testing. I am not a unit testing expert. I don't claim to be a unit testing expert, but for anyone, for me, for years, for anyone who comes to me and says, I want to learn about unit testing, I have to say, Shai Reznik. Like, there's no other answer for me. It's obvious. You have to go to HiRes.io, right? This is like the most comprehensive, and maybe I'm very opinionated about this, but I try to be really objective. And I have heard over and over and over again that his students love him. I love him. He's a great human. He's hilarious. Shai Reznik, you want to say hello?
Wow, every time I need to remember to transfer you the PayPal funds for the introduction. Okay.
I'm not getting paid to say this, you guys. It's true. I would not lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
I also love him, but his students love him, and he's hilarious. He's a very good teacher. And I'm not saying, let's not get mushy or anything. Don't let it go to your head, Shai.
Yeah, I'm too big to talk to. So bye, everybody. I'm not... No, but thank you very much. I super appreciate it. And I love to see everyone here. Some of you I already know, Anna, hey, and Tim hiding behind the camera. You don't see him, but and Edward, and of course Pete, my lovely Pete, and Adam, my new best friend, Adam Murray. So and Oyemaja, right? And Arjun, and I feel I know if I forget it, I don't see any, like everybody in the grid. So if I forget or miss anyone, so I really, really love seeing you all, and I really love Angular Nation. I think again, every time I say it, Bonnie, what you're doing with this community is amazing, and keep it up. Hi. So some of you know me, some of you don't know me. Testing is everything that I do. And I just had a super busy week. I'm planning to release a new open source library around testing, which will change the way we write or improve the way we write micro test or like single action tests, which is exciting to me, but I have like problem with the CI and all that stuff, so I need to fix them. So I'm on that. But yeah, that's what excites me now, and I'm super happy to hear any question that you might have, and to help you as much as possible. Just to say, I feel always that I have so much more to learn in this field, and so much I'm like feel like I'm only scratching the surface in terms of where we can like get to in terms of testing. So So if you have stuff new to share, last time Sander I think shared Betterer, which is a new open source tool from Craig, which is an amazing tool. So anything you want to share, add. I mean, I'm in a always like learning state of mind. I never think that I'm an expert and I got there and I know everything and stuff like that. I just like focus my life around testing. That's why I have slightly more experience maybe than others. Anyway, so that's my long short intro.
Thank you, Shai. We're very happy to have you here. We could not have a testing Q&A panel without you. There's no way. I have a couple more introductions, and then we're going to get into questions. I see Anthony. Anthony, did you want to respond to Shai, or you? Because I want to have a couple more introductions before we open up for questions.
No, I've got a question. So you do the intros.
Oh, by the way,
you have the first question, my friend. Go ahead, Shai.
Okay, I will say it after. Okay, no, go ahead.
Okay, so I also said, and speaking of, because I was saying, ask people what they want. And this is like, I don't know if it's just my experience. I did a lot of enterprise consulting and I did a lot of, helping people with Angular. There are a lot of people that I've met in my travels struggling with unit testing because it can get kind of crazy, especially if you're learning. It's difficult. And one of the things that I found, at least in my experience, that this thing called Cypress came along, right? And Cypress, and I know a lot of people who have not discovered Cypress and are not using Cypress, but it's been very consistent that the people who have used Cypress love it. It's like, oh, this is way easier than what we were doing before. So
it's not only easier, it works every freaking time.
It's so much easier to implement. It's so much easier to maintain. It's so great. And so I reached out to this guy, Gleb, who I think started Cypress. I don't know. I know him. He's a great guy. And I said, can you come and do a Cypress talk for us? Because I think more people need to know about Cypress. And he said, actually, there are a couple of people on the Cypress team who are actually like focused on Angular and working specifically on Angular tooling and stuff like that. And he said, I could send you them. And I was like, yes, please. So I met them and they're amazing. So I would like to introduce to you Adam and Paul. I don't know if I've seen Matt, but these guys are so fun. You want to say hello? And then I have one more introduction after that. And yeah, say hello, Adam. And hello, Paul. I haven't known you guys very long, but y'all are so great.
Oh, thank you. I'll jump in and say, and I want to echo what Shai said. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm an engineer that's needed tests a lot and they've helped me out a lot. And so, I've learned the power of them and I've, just really, really enjoyed building them and writing them. And, coming on board with Cypress has been huge. I've used Cypress since 2018. So it was just kind of natural that I honestly, I can't believe I work here and I get to build this out. But yeah, like Bonnie said, Cypress is amazing and we're always pushing the product further and further. And so, we just released version 8 if you haven't looked at it and updated, but we're always, updating it, always listening to the community for the best things that we could build. We did work and to build a schematic for Angular and we're constantly updating that. I just added an updated version yesterday or 2 days ago to add reporter options in there. So if you have any ideas about ways that we can improve our tooling in Angular or things that we can be doing, we're wide open to that and wanting to do it. So, yeah.
And if I can add, also, the Cypress team is looking for ambassadors. If you're interested in doing a Cypress talk, and Adam, because I talked to you a couple months ago and I met you and I was like, oh my gosh, we should be friends. And then I said, you have to meet my other friends. And I introduced you to Anaboka and Sander and Shai. And then I haven't talked to you since then. How's that going, by the way?
So it's going well. Shai and I have talked quite a bit. Sander and I haven't gotten together yet. So we need to get together. And then Anna is, I think Anna's doing her presentation next week. And so we've been getting together with that. And then I know Paul has also been working with Anna. So we're so grateful for the community here and really excited to be a part of it. It's really it's so great to be part of an active group of people that are so committed to building quality software. So yeah.
We're very happy to have you here.
Yeah,
Paul, can you jump in here?
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you jump in, Paul, and say hello? I haven't known Paul for very long, but like Paul, we already love you. And I don't know where Matt is, but we love Matt too. So you got to tell him we gave him a shout out. We called him. Where is he? What could he possibly have to do?
We all love Matt. We will definitely spread the word.
Yeah.
There's not really much more to add, in addition to what everyone else has said. Other than the fact that I am an expert, so if you have any questions, no, I'm just kidding. No, it's same thing as Adam. Really excited to be here. I'm one of the newest hires on the Cypress team. And one of the first things that I was tasked with was, connecting with the Angular community, figuring out what could be helpful, what we could do that would make things, life even easier for folks. So really happy to be here. Was happy to do that initial meeting with you guys, and just happy to keep things going. Everything has been great on our end, and we're excited to be here. So thank you for everyone.
Absolutely. And we're definitely planning more events like this, obviously, because we're just getting to know you guys and we love you. So we're definitely going to hopefully see more and more of the Cypress team. I met Olivia. I love Olivia. So yeah, lots more coming. Okay, one more introduction. We're going to jump into questions. I cannot even tell you how happy I am that Bacon Darwin was able to join us today, because he's really busy and he doesn't always have time. But I reached out to him and I said, hey, can you come and join us? Because I really think, when I met Pete, I had no idea how many levels of cool he was. I met him at a conference and I was like, oh, he's such a fun guy. And then I didn't even realize how smart he is, and he knows all kinds of stuff. Super humble, super nice. One of my favorite people, I gotta say. Peter Bacon Darwin. Can you say hello?
Really don't hold back on the introductions, do you?
I'm so happy that you're here. I'm sorry.
There's very little for us to say, other than to try and then bring the temperature back down a bit. But I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really sorry that I don't get to come more often. It's just unfortunate that often the sessions that you have just coincide with all the meetings I have with the Angular team. So
yeah, I'm trying to move things around. We're going to make some adjustments.
This is great.
Yeah.
This is good lunchtime slot for me. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I've been working on Angular since before it was even V1, when it was AngularJS and all of that old stuff. And the thing that really brought me to Angular in the first place was its testing story, actually, because I just come from a background of building, helping to port Ruby to .NET, and the whole thing was just built on top of we've got to get all the specs working. Ruby had this amazing set of specs, and so you just had to build everything to work with the specs. And it was such a wonderful way to work, because you had some really clear goals, and then you also had a really clear check of whether you were doing it right. So when I got to Angular, I was just like, oh, this is just exactly the kind of framework that I want. But what was really interesting is at the time, it was quite new to do that kind of thing. And also the tooling wasn't in place. So the Angular team actually stepped out and moved things forward by creating things like Karma and Protractor, which just didn't really exist at the time. And it actually supported the community to move forward in that way. But you can see that they're already starting to show their age. And it's great that then other people in the community wider have taken on this role and are pushing it forward. So Cypress and Jest and things like that are really great tools. And it's really great to see how big the ecosystem is now. So very happy to be here. I doubt I'll be able to answer any questions that Shai and all the others can't answer. So I'll just sit quietly in the background and just enjoy.
I definitely think you count as one of our old school Angular testing experts, just since the beginning. So it's very good to have you.
The main word.
I might be jumping the gun here, but I just want to give a shout out to our rising testing star, Anaboka, who started out as an intern and is doing a Cypress talk, and really is just so much fun. And I'm really excited because I really think that Anaboka is going to be on the panel as experts. Before you know, Anna, you want to say hi real quick? Just give us a shout out.
Yeah, yeah, I'm wonderful. Yeah, I wasn't expecting a call out, but yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a part of Shai's testing inner circle, which is really, really cool. I don't know if I should reveal it because it's kind of a elite secret society. I don't know, but and I've talked with Adam and Paul so far, and they're fantastic to talk with. And yeah, I'm really excited to do the presentation next week. It's linked, I think, on the Cypress channel and on the Angular Africa channel. And I know I see Valentine is also here. So an official hi to Valentine, and thank you for having us next week. Yeah.
I think the reason why you became one of my favorites so quickly, and I have a couple of other favorites, Oya, is because like some people, like you just come and you work so hard, and I think that you're guaranteed to be successful. And speaking of Natty, yeah, and I just love to see this energy. So I just want to make you feel welcome, and I want to absolutely have you being a seat at the table, because I think that you're already earning it, even though you haven't been with us very long. And it's just so exciting for me to see all the beginners and experts mixed together, and we're friends. So with that, let's kick it off.
I want
Go
to
ahead,
say,
Shai.
I want to say something that I forgot, and people will be mad at me if I won't say it.
Nobody's mad at you.
No, people from my company will be mad at me.
Oh yeah.
So I forgot to. So I've been doing this workshop lately. Some of you have seen it, called the cost-effective Angular testing, and I'm planning on stop doing it live. Okay, I'm planning on maybe doing a recording or something like that. So for the next few times, I think I will do it live, and then I will stop. So I'm just putting here like a plug, a link in the chat, so you could join, and it's like highres.link/AngularNation_QA. Not QA, quality assurance, it's Q&A, but yeah. Anyway, so that's a plug. And I want to say that your connection with me and Adam led to a new free course that I'm working on that will show Angular developer how to move from Protractor to Cypress. So that's only you heard it first here. Okay, so that's
this is so exciting.
Coming down the
this
pipe.
Is where people get connected with other people, and
that's
then you
all
have
on
these
you, Bonnie.
collaborations.
That's because of you, Bonnie. Because of
this
you.
Is so exciting.
So yeah, that's what I want to say. Okay, I will shut up now.
I'm very excited to see these collaborations, because as soon as I met Adam and I met Shai, and I was like, you guys don't already know each other. We got to fix that right now. So, and then so this is very exciting for me. I love it. Okay. Anthony Miller, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So this is a really, starting at the bare basics of testing.
I was going to say, I hope we can start with beginner questions. So that's absolutely perfect.
This is a beginner question.
I love it.
Because I'm only kind of getting started, and especially with DOM testing. With inside of Angular. So there was the async function that was provided by the Angular testing suite, and that has now been deprecated in favor of wait for async function. So you use that obviously in the before each to basically compile your test bed. Now, why do we have that as opposed to just using the ES, promise-based syntax with the async await? Because obviously you can await the compile of the templates, or you seem to use this wait for async function. So if someone could, clarify the ambiguity there, because there's no concrete, I guess, guide on what the best practice is. So that's my big one question.
Sounds like a perfect question for Pete.
It's actually got a fairly simple answer. So I hope. So there's one thing that wait for async does, which a normal async await native syntax doesn't do. So just to be clear, so the native syntax means that when you're stepping through the tests, when you hit a promise, it will not move on to the next line until that promise either resolves or rejects, okay? And so if you just need to wait for a promise to resolve, then that's definitely the cleanest and simplest way to move forward. So for instance, if you're compiling your component, it returns a promise, and then you can ensure that it will finish compiling before you move on to actually using the component. What wait for async does is hooks into the zone.js system. And what zone.js provides is the ability to wait for all micro tasks to be completed. And so, for instance, what you might do is in the middle of your async step, you might trigger a set timeout call for like 2 seconds, and then something will happen. Unless you actually return a promise that will be resolved when that timeout completes, then the basic native async await wouldn't stop for that. It will just move on when whatever promise you return resolves. Whereas what wait for async does is it actually waits for all of these micro tasks to settle, to finish. So for instance, if you made an HTTP call or a set timeout or something like that, those will actually have to complete before it will allow you to go on to the next step. So what it means is that you don't have to expose the actual underlying asynchronicity of your code all the way up to a promise that you then control from the top.
That makes sense. But in terms of the before each, when you're doing the compile of the test bed, is it best to use the wait for async thing aspect when you just on the before each, or is it better to do the async await when you're for the compile of the test bed?
The way it works right now, you don't need wait for async for component compilation to complete. Moreover, if you're using the latest Angular CLI, then it actually uses AOT compilation to do that compile. So effectively, the whole thing is done synchronously anyway. So the whole waiting for components to compile is no longer actually an issue at all. You can actually just do it synchronously anyway. So the actual answer is you don't need either of those two. You can just go ahead and use the components straight away without calling compile components on them anyway.
Great, thank you so much. That's, I mean, obviously, because there just doesn't seem to be the documentation there of what is needed just to start the boot process of a test.
Yeah, so all of that stuff was written like before async await existed. And also before we were able to compile things during unit testing. So they were needed. And then as they've kind of become less and less needed, we haven't updated the docs to make it less obvious that you need them.
Okay, great, thank you.
Good question.
That was my major question.
That was a good question. I don't know how much that was a beginner question, but that was a very good question. And I think it's like one of the fundamentals that a lot of people don't, because I felt very confident about async versus sync for a long time before Sonder helped me realize that I actually didn't understand it at all, but I didn't know I was confused because I wasn't really paying attention to how it worked under the hood. I want to put a link in the chat to a talk that Sonder and Samantha and I did about the difference between async and sync, and really visually, like what does that look like? Samantha actually did a little visual. It was fun. Sonder, can you give them the very quick version of what we covered in that talk, and then we'll go on to the next question?
Yeah, we covered the difference between sync and async because a lot of JavaScript programmers are confused around that. Actually, JavaScript is a sync language. It is top to bottom, so it runs from top to bottom and it doesn't stop for anything. It doesn't stop for a promise. It just goes, see, oh, there is a promise, and the promise goes somewhere and it goes on. So in this talk, we highlight what happens below on a little bit more technical level, but in an easy to follow way.
Yeah, because it's async, but then there's like RxJS, and we have all these observables. So then there's like all this synchronous behavior, but then JavaScript is single threaded, and so it gets a little weird. But anyway, so we explain that in a very like visual, fun, basic way. So you should check that out. And who's got the next? We don't have any hands up, y'all. Who's got the next question? I thought we had more hands up. Anna Boca.
Thank you. Yeah, mine is definitely going to be a beginner question. Yeah, I don't think Anthony's was really.
That's okay.
Yeah. So in Shai, in your workshop, the cost-effective Angular testing, you had talked about how you recommend having about like 8 to 10 smoke test, and I'm assuming those are the same as regression end-to-end tests. I get a little confused with all the definitions. And I was wondering, they should be few, happy, and critical. What are some, I don't know what you would say, what are some guidelines for what those tests should be?
That is a good question. And the difference between, like, what's the difference between unit tests, end-to-end tests, smoke tests, all that? Like, that's a very good question.
Okay, thank you for the question. So yeah, that's another thing that I'm working on now with Cypress, like on the smoke testing basics course. So just to get all the terms in order. So again, if you heard me in the past few years, you know that I don't like the term unit test because I think unit is an ambiguous term. Sometimes it describes an isolated test, sometimes it describes an integrated test. So what I like to refer to those tests as like with other dimension, but for the sake of simplicity, when people usually talk about unit tests, they talk about code that tests your other code. Right, like the classes or the services or the and even like your DOM, like if you compile the components like Anthony asked, that could be considered a unit test, but the definition is ambiguous in terms of, do you like fake all of your dependency for that code, or aren't you faking the dependencies? And that's so in my world, in my definition, you do fake, okay, and I call it isolated test. And in my world, okay, and in others also, but what I like to teach is when you write a test, you should stick to only single action tests, okay, and not like I don't know, invoking a method, checking something, and then invoking another method and checking another thing, like everything inside of the same test. Each method invocation should be in its own separate use case test. So that's like for unit test. End-to-end test, usually it's when you don't isolate anything, right? So you just like, all the like, let's say the running of the code, okay, go through from the UI all the way to the database and back, right? That's why it's end-to-end. And now that gets me to talk about smoke test and the original question. So there are a lot of advantages to having end-to-end tests, but there are a lot of also disadvantages. And I like to always focus on where is the sweet spot, right? What's the most benefit we can get out of a specific strategy or tool. So when I start with like end-to-end tests and trying to figure out if it's a good strategy. So what I mean is, okay, getting all of the system up, all the Dockers and everything, right? All the database and the server side and launching a browser and having a script, just doing like mimicking the user like you do with Cypress, and not faking anything in between, and hitting the database, getting back and see that you got your result. The cost of it is that it takes time, right, to run all the system, and also you have problems that one problem can fail lots and lots of tests, right? And it's hard to get to the root cause sometime and figure out where is the problem. And what I saw also with my clients and also with other people on the webs is that developers start with this strategy, like for large applications, and then they stop. Okay, and then they have like stale tests from a year ago that are like muting, and they don't want to see their fail because they don't want to really touch it, because it takes like, I don't know, enormous amount of time to get them all and to run all of those, and they get used to throw it over to the QA side. You deal with it, right? Let me focus on my code and the features and stuff like that. So then I asked myself, okay, a few years ago, if they have advantages, okay, so let's talk about the advantages of end-to-end test. They actually show you if you assembled everything together in the correct way, and also all the moving parts, you have all the combinations, everything like is connected, right, in the right way. So that when you write isolated tests, like I mentioned before, you lose that confidence of like, is everything connected, because you're faking, all the dependencies of each part that you test in isolation. So how can we get the confidence without the cost, or minimizing the cost and maximizing the confidence? That's always what I ask about everything. So smoke test is a technique that is not new, is an old technique. Okay, I didn't invented it. Okay, you can Google it and read it about it in Wikipedia, which says that you want to use end-to-end tests, but to sit down and figure out what are the critical things in your application that you always want to test before you push code to production. Okay, and no matter what. So, and then there's like, I won't get into everything now, but I would just try to give like a few tips. I call them like happy, critical, and few. Okay, so happy because they test only the happy path. Okay, which means when stuff work, like they don't test for errors and stuff like that. Critical is only the critical path. Let's say, for example, you have an application, that I don't know, like a web store, okay, e-commerce site or something like that, where the most important thing is to maybe add the product to the cart, check out, do the registration, and then pay. Okay, and sometimes maybe get a confirmation via email, which that you can also test in testing tools like email testing tools. But anyway, that's the critical path of your application. You know that if something goes wrong there, you lose money, right? The business. This is the 3 a.m. call, right? That okay, wake up and fix production. This is the important, the critical thing. So that's why I mean by critical. And few is to mitigate the cost, is to focus only on as few as possible of these tests that try to cover all of your main branches of your application. What do I mean by that? Is that when you have, let's say, an application and you have tabs above, and each tab opens up a new feature, right? So let's say you have like, I don't know, your account, or I don't know, like the browsing of products, and then you have settings, and then let's say it's not an e-commerce, let's say it's an application of some sort. You always have settings, right? Every application have a way to change like the account and stuff like that. So for each tab, or each like I call them root features, you write a test that goes through all the, again, you analyze what's the critical path there, and you can do it by like looking at your analytics and looking at the user journeys and figuring out where most of your user go and what's impacting your business the most. Okay, so you focus with your smoke tests, you focus on those paths, and that's why I say 8, 10. It's just a number that, like, 8 to 10 root features. It's not like set in stone, right? If you have like 16 tabs, write 16 smoke tests. I don't know, but it should be like 1 per root feature, and that way, and it's a multi-step, multi-action test. So you test, go all through the journey that will go. You change, you want to make it inside of one test that like mimics how the user would most likely use your app, and that way, when you run this small suite of tests, they run faster than if you try to write everything with end-to-end tests, like all the error states and all the possible use cases, and I see people try to do that, and it works, but for small apps. But for big apps, it's a nightmare, because if you really want to get all the possible combinations to get the 100, I don't know, like as much confidence as you want, you need to write a lot of tests. Let's say, this service returns an error and this service returns a success, okay? Or sometimes both return an error. Sometimes, like, how do you handle all the situation? This is impossible to write with end-to-end tests. That's why we have the isolated tests.
Hey, Shai, can
yeah.
I jump in? Because you got carried away. But I think this is so important, though, because I've seen this a lot. When I was consulting, there are a couple of companies that actually say, we want you to have 100% unit test coverage. And I think you got to be really careful about that, especially when, if you're doing a flat rate, you could get in a lot of trouble with that. But I really think that this is important, what Shai's saying, because basically the gist of what I'm getting from this is, and again, Shai is like the most experienced with all of the unit testing that I've seen. And I think this is probably one of the most important things is it's more important to focus on testing your functionality than testing every single line of code. Because if you try to get 100% test coverage, which people do, I've actually been on teams that that's their metric. And it's really, you're going to do a lot of extra work. Basically, is that in a nutshell? Is that right, Shai?
So I needed to give a disclaimer. I talk a lot. That's why I want to open up a new podcast, because it's the best medium for me, because I talk a lot.
That's okay. We love you. I just want to keep us moving. I want to see if Natty's still here, because Natty had a question and Natty has to leave. Natty, do we have time to see if the Cypress team can answer your question before you go?
I am here. Hi. Thanks for letting me ask myself. Hi, everyone. So I've been working relatively recently with Cypress tags. I'm still not sure how to use them, but my idea was to be able to see all the tags that I'm adding to my tests and my describes and my test cases in the Cypress dashboard. But I see that in the Cypress dashboard, the tags that are available are run tags that are apparently completely different from test tags. So is there a way I can see my test tags in the Cypress dashboard?
I guess that I need to, so can you explain to me what you mean when you say run tags versus test tags? Because that's one thing I was going to mention. Yeah, we have the tags flag in the CLI that you can add and then filter on those flags within the dashboard. So I'm not sure, where are you trying to put the flags? The tags, sorry.
Yeah, my tags are actually in my code. Within the describe, I get to add the tags. And I was hoping to see exactly those in the Cypress dashboard, but I don't see them. Is that a misconfiguration, or is that like different concepts?
That's a different concept. So the one you're thinking about that would be when you actually run that command in via the CLI command. That's where you're going to add that dash tags or -t. It's in the commands log, you can see. But that will add those tags. But the ones actually in the test itself, that's a different concept.
And there is no absolute way for me to see those tags that are in my code in the Cypress dashboard.
I'd have to see an example of what you're doing. So if you want to send that to me and just kind of show me what it is exactly you're trying to do, I'd be happy to help you a little bit more.
Okay, cool. Okay, so if you're at Angular Nation, I can try to create a stack blitz real quick and tag you.
Yep.
There's a Cypress channel.
Okay, cool. Then I will tag you there, Adam.
So we can
Thank
all
you
see
so
it.
much. Okay.
And y'all, Angular Nation is pretty small and the Cypress channel is pretty small, which means if you post a question in there, you have a very good chance of like getting an answer very quickly, because the Cypress team is actually in there. And so if you have any, and really it's, for me, I think when I'm thinking about using a library or any like the customer service, actually, like I just love it. And I think it's more encouraging to use it when you know that you can go and get help if you have questions, because if you're trying to do this in production, like, you don't want all that responsibility by yourself. So I think it's really great that we have support from the Cypress team. Thank you, Cypress team. Okay, Sonder wanted to add something about smoke tests. And then if anybody else has questions, raise your hand and we'll get to you next. Natty, very good question, by the way, Natty. Thank you as always for bringing your questions.
Okay. What I wanted to add about smoke tests is I really love the ability to add smoke tests to an application. The big difference between smoke tests and unit tests is smoke tests are really there to detect failures that make your customers really, really angry. So you want to make sure that those are tested. The downside is they don't tell you where the error is. They tell you, hey, this feature doesn't work. The customer cannot check out. Yeah, but why? Well, for the why, you need unit tests. Unit tests will tell you exactly where the failure is. Smoke test will just tell you, hey, this feature doesn't work. The user cannot log in. The user cannot do a checkout. But the why you have to figure out. There is a lot of value in that, though. If you have like a complete set of smoke tests or end-to-end tests, or I don't really mind how you are calling those, you can be rest assured if you break something in your application that will make your customer really, really angry, it will be catched by the tests, by the end-to-end tests, so you don't ship anything. And as you're working on a certain point, you probably know where the failure is coming from anyway. So
I always look at it like
value.
I always look at it like unit testing is testing your functions, and end-to-end testing is testing what's happening in the browser. At least that's the way I always kind of looked at it. Yeah. This is so fun. Okay, go ahead, Sander.
End-to-end test doesn't only test what is happening in the browser, it also tests what's happening in the background. It also tests what's happening on the server. It tests end-to-end. That's what it is doing. So if the failure is in your backend because they did something there, an end-to-end test will catch that.
Yeah, but it won't tell you where it came. It's just going to say it doesn't work.
Yeah.
From the browser
perspective.
Yeah,
you can't find that, whatever it is not going to tell you why. But I will say too, one of the important things, and this is what a lot of people leave off, is, for instance, they're testing a login flow and they just go through and they just make sure that the user can log in, but then they need to make sure what happens after a user logs in. Is that happening? And that's one point I've seen quite a bit of failures, is where they're not making sure the user gets redirected appropriately. They're not making sure that page loads appropriately, whatever it may be. So, I would definitely say be more verbose in that end-to-end testing.
Not to mention error states and all the permutations along the way.
Correct.
Absolutely. Good advice. Aditya, I want to give a shout out to Aditya because we just recently discovered Aditya. Connie and I noticed that he had written a couple of blog posts that we liked. And so we reached out to him and asked him to do a technical talk, and we didn't know if he'd ever done it. And so he came and did a technical, he rocked it. It was such a good talk. And immediately we liked this guy. So Aditya, how are you? It's good to see you. What's your question?
Yeah, hey all. So my question is very beginner friendly. So when we're writing E2E test cases, right, we have these selectors that we have to use to get access to the component or the element, right? So what would be the best way to write, these selectors? Is it through, custom data attributes or, custom JS classes? And because this recently came up with our company, the QA team is actually trying to test things, but they don't have any, any way to get hold of the element. So what would be the proper way to do this? And as a developer, if QA is testing it separately, what should be done from our side? And yeah, just about that.
I missed the first part of the question because somebody yelled at me. So you are asking about basically this, what's the best practice to let's say use the selectors to get the element in order to test it. There's a convention from recent year that started using data test ID. So anything you're using with data dash something, right? You can make up a name and just it will be invisible, and you don't have to mess up your CSS classes and all that stuff. So you can call it like data CI or data test ID. Data test ID is more agnostic, so I usually recommend using that, but that's what I'm doing. Anyway, that's my answer.
Sander, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I want to hear what Sander's opinion is.
Yeah, sometimes Sander makes faces, and I'm like, well, we have to stop and see what Sander's face is doing. What's going on there, Sander?
Well, I see a lot of people adding special attributes only for testing. And that would be a no for me. If they are there only for testing, that is the wrong way to create a selector for it. Most elements have like a unique selector. If you have an app user component, probably you can select it by selecting app user, and you probably know what's inside app user. Otherwise, you wouldn't write a test for it. So that's it. There are certain points where you want to add like a unique identifier, but not only for tests. If you're doing it only for tests, you are adding stuff to your program that really doesn't need to be there or shouldn't even be there.
Shai?
So
I love it when they like debate. It gets really interesting.
we and Sander never debate. We always agree on everything.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
I have his home address.
So, yeah, I believe the question was from the QA point of view, where sometimes it's hard to, you want to reach a certain thing and you don't want to use like nested selectors, CSS selectors, like, okay, this app component, let me get like the third button and like, stuff like that. And so I saw the recommendation of not using or minimizing the use of data test ID, which a lot of the time you can just like, search for a button with the label of, a click here or something like that. The downside of that is that now for every time it changes, now the tests are breaking, right? So that's a downside of using this technique. The downside of using, I would love to know what's the downside of using. I agree that you don't need to add data test ID to everything that you're writing, because then you blow it off you blow up the app with all these extra characters. But I would love to know, Sander, from your point of view, what are the downsides of using data test ID for like this, getting that inner link or something like that?
Well, if you really need an inner link of something, actually Cypress provides some pretty good tooling for that. If you do Cypress open, you can click whatever, and it basically hands you over the selector. And if the selectors change, basically you are changing things in your program, so you must update your test anyway.
But not
what if you have older tests?
Not necessarily, because if you change, let's say, the layout of the page, or like let's say even if you switch, columns. Okay, now this column is on the right, and now this column. So that
most of the selectors will still just work. Especially if you use CSS to switch places, the selectors actually don't change that much.
Yeah, that depends. Depending on
it's always depending on the context. It is always depending on the context. Sometimes a special ID attribute is the only way to reach something, but you should be aim for that to be not necessary, because that means you are doing something fishy, in my opinion.
So every time you use a data test ID, you are trying to rob a bank. That's what you're saying?
Yeah,
it's very suspicious.
A kitten dies.
I don't know. It depends on the experience. I think if you can try it and see if the way you try to select, I don't know, if Cypress hands you the selector and it has like lots of nesting, and you try to try to change the structure, and you have a lot of test break like constantly without the intention of the test, like the original intention of the test. So it's breaking without the need to break, or without really a reason to break. Then you might try to consider, okay, maybe I need to use test IDs instead of like very, very specific long selectors that just try to get to this link. But you can experiment and see.
Hold on, you guys, because just for fun, because I'm just curious. Azaria, we haven't met Azaria yet, but he has very strong opinions, and I can see him in the chat going, no, I disagree. And I'm just trying to figure out which one of you he disagrees with. Azaria, you got to chime in here and tell us, because I don't even know. It's like my parents are arguing, and I don't even know what to do now. But it's fun. But it's all in, because we're all friends, so it's all in very good spirits. What do you think here, Azaria?
So
Okay, in my opinion, like I do prefer the custom attributes because in the past, before Angular, like having to actually identify like an element, like Shai's saying, it's like all the way down to like a text box or something in a table or a link or something like that. It became very messy, and like I used XPath, which were really horrible and became very long and difficult to maintain, and the structure changed. Like the thing is, like with custom attributes, like at least you know that is whatever you put there is what is going to be there for your test specifically. So in that way, you're making your test like testable. Your application testable by putting those attributes there, and knowing that when the test actually accesses that page or whatever it is, you know exactly that it's going to click that specific element. So that is like my idea of it.
There you have it.
Yeah.
Azaria, where are you from? I love your accent. I'm glad you came off mute.
I'm from Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, your voice sounds beautiful. Okay, Sonder, because there are more. I mean, Anthony's in here in the chat. So can we? Okay, let's just for the sake of family harmony, can we say that you would not because you like things to be very clean. If Sonder was a chef, everything would be from scratch, you guys. So Sonder likes things to be very, very clean. But can we just say, for the sake of harmony, that you won't judge us if we want to use?
I won't. My idea of not adding attributes for testing specially is because usually that is a sign that the application becomes messy and it becomes hard to create selectors, which is a code smell, in my opinion. So,
and everybody else can agree that we need to be mindful of that because that's a valid point, right? Yeah?
Yeah, but don't ask Sander not to judge, okay? You're taking a part of his soul, okay? So.
Okay,
I just will judge in silence.
No, you will implode, Sander.
No, Bonnie, I can add one additional wrinkle to this, and that is I agree with Sander that a lot of this depends on the app structure itself. But the one selector that we've been talking, we generally recommend that adding the specific data IDs for the sake of a consistent ID for the element you're looking for. An alternative to that, which I've seen people doing lately, which is not adding a data attribute for the sake of just for testing and only that. You kind of kill two birds with one stone, is to use the ARIA role as the selector. So in that way, you're sort of getting yourself into accessibility, and that in theory won't change either. So it kind of acts as that unique identifier, plus you're getting accessibility as well. So I've seen that as a good path that people are starting to go down as well, as an alternative to data IDs.
Paul, you got Sonder and Shai both nodding at the same time. Good job. All right.
First of all, that's a great recommendation. I've been trying to think about ways to incorporate more accessibility in my trainings, and that's a great gateway drug to that.
All right.
But my follow-up question for that is, usually data test ID are like variable names, like with dashes or underscore, something like that. And ARIA labels are more like readable for text readers, and so once the screen reader will read it like page dash this dash, something like that, if you will call it, or you just leave it with spaces and just search for that.
That's very. That was a heated debate, you guys. That was kind of crazy. That was fun. All right, I want to get on to Arjun's question, but real quick before I do, I just want to take a minute to see what Pete thinks about this whole controversial data test ID topic.
Before Pete, I just want to say that I'm fat and I have a CrossFit lesson in 30 minutes that I need to get to. So I have 10 minutes, and then I will need to leave to be less fat. So
we don't think you're fat at all. We think you're great. But we're going to do this again, right? This is not the only time this is so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about this controversial subject, Pete?
So I just have to keep talking for 10 minutes, right?
No, Arjun has a question too. No, you don't have to talk the whole time.
No, I'm joking. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm always trying to avoid conflict. So I'm not going to say anything controversial. What I'm going to say is that one of the things that is really fascinating for me about testing in general is that there is no cut and dried solution often. It's like, for me, it really is an art form. You know, it's really about, like, you can't just have a textbook that says, this is how you test. It's very much, you have to finesse it based on the scenarios that you're working under and the constraints that you're working under, especially with your client. They have different requirements. So I always try to avoid having kind of hard cut and dry, you must do your testing this way. I feel that there's so much room for subjectivity in it. And that's what comes from experience and doing lots of testing. The other thing I'd say is that whenever you get to a situation where you're finding it hard to access data or access to sort of a part of the code that you want to test, that always for me flags up that maybe I want to have another look at the design, because I find that testing often drives my design of the app by saying, oh, if I find this hard to test, then maybe I've like hidden it too far deeply and I need to restructure my app, and often ends up resulting in cleaner architecture. So this is what I'm going to say, rather than trying to go headlong into yet another argument with Sander and Shai.
That was beautifully diplomatic. Thank you.
That's nonsense. Nonsense.
He agrees with me. What are you talking about?
If we were in person, the experts would have had lightsabers, you guys. It would be great.
Oh, that would be cool.
I didn't even realize.
That wouldn't be fair. Pete
Would
would
be
be
firing
winning all
laser
the time.
tests at each other.
Yeah. I didn't even realize that we were out of time because I was having so much fun and I would stay here and hang out with you guys all day if I could. And then Arjun dropped out and I was like, oh no, because I realized we went to the top of the hour, but he came right back. So we are out of time, but we're gonna, is it okay if we just grab Arjun's question? Arjun, it's not too late?
Please ask your question, Arjun. Don't let us feel these emotions.
Oh, he's gone.
No, we lost him.
God damn it, Arjun. Okay.
Well, he might have been having a hard time with his video, or sometimes if they refresh. So we'll just give him a minute and see if he comes back. I absolutely think that we should obviously do this again. I'm going to try and schedule this. Is everybody okay with me scheduling it at the same time every month? We're going to do like the third Thursday at this time every month. We're just going to come back here and hang out. If you are a testing nerd, just come back here the third Thursday of every month, and whatever time zone this was, it's going to be the same time, third Thursday of every month, and we're just going to come back here and nerd out big time over testing. Arjun, I'm very sorry that we didn't get to your question. Give us another chance next month.
In front of the queue next time.
Same bat time, same bat channel. Can we all just give a big, huge, warm thank you to our experts? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, that's it, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for hosting us, Bonnie.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye.
Great seeing you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.